Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Books and Bytes. Today we're going deep into Xi Jinping, the governance of China.
All 4 volumes.
All 4 volumes. We're
Yeah.
not messing around here. This is going to be a serious deep dive.
It is. And these books are really, I think, essential reading for anyone who's trying to understand where China's headed in the 21st century.
Yeah, these are compilations of Xi Jinping's speeches and writings. So it's kind of I don't know, it's a unique window into his thinking and his political philosophy.
Exactly.
So we've got a lot to cover across these 4 volumes. What kind of overview can you give us? What are some of the main themes that emerge?
Well, you see a few key themes that really run through all 4 volumes. One is the absolute importance of the Communist Party, the leadership of the party in every facet of Chinese society.
Okay.
That's something he emphasizes constantly.
So party dominance front and center.
Absolutely. Another is this pursuit of economic development, although he does talk about a new normal, so slower growth, and the need to kind of navigate that strategically.
Right. So not just growth for growth's sake,
Right.
but a more nuanced approach.
Exactly. And then intertwined with that economic vision, there's a strong emphasis on innovation and technology. He really sees self-reliance in science and technology
Yeah.
as being crucial for China's future.
Yeah, it makes sense given the geopolitical climate these days.
Absolutely. And then, of course, there's the theme of China's role in the world, an increasingly prominent role on the world stage. Xi Jinping talks about this idea of a community of shared future for mankind, which, there's a lot of debate about what that actually means in practice.
Yeah, a lot of different interpretations out there. Okay, so we got party dominance, economic transformation, technological advancement, and China's global aspirations. These are some pretty weighty themes.
They are, and they're all interconnected. So to really understand Xi Jinping's vision, we need to see how they kind of play out and evolve across these 4 volumes.
All right, so let's do that. Let's start chronologically with the first volume, which was published back in 2014. What kind of picture of Xi Jinping's thinking does this first volume paint?
Well, the first volume really lays the groundwork, I think, for Xi Jinping's approach to governance. There's a big emphasis on strengthening the Communist Party, on rooting out corruption, instilling discipline within the party ranks. You might remember this, I don't know if you remember this metaphor, about taking out tigers, swatting flies, and hunting down foxes.
Ah, yes. That's a pretty memorable one.
It is. So there's this real sense that to achieve national rejuvenation, you need this unwavering party unity and adherence to the party's ideology.
Right. And that focus on party leadership is front and center. It's not just about, tackling corruption or anything. It's really about the party's role in guiding everything.
Absolutely. He repeatedly makes the point that the party's role is to guide every aspect of Chinese society. So from the economy to social progress to cultural development. The party is the only force that's capable of steering China towards its goals and ensuring stability. This is also where this idea of the two upholds comes into play.
Yeah, what is the two uphold?
So the two upholds basically refers to upholding the authority of the CPC Central Committee and upholding Xi Jinping's core position within the party.
Okay.
So it's about consolidating power, ensuring absolute loyalty to the central leadership.
Right. So Xi Jinping is positioning the party.
Yeah.
With himself at the helm as the ultimate authority.
Precisely. And that belief in the party's leadership, that's a constant throughout all 4 volumes.
Okay, so we have a strong, centralized leadership with Xi Jinping at the core, driving towards national rejuvenation. But how does he envision China achieving this rejuvenation? What are the specifics?
Well, that's where this idea of economic transformation comes in. Xi Jinping acknowledges that China can't rely on that rapid export-driven growth model that propelled its economy in the past. He talks about a new normal, slower, more sustainable growth, which he argues is essential for long-term prosperity.
This new normal sounds like a pretty significant shift. What does it actually entail?
It's about moving away from an over-reliance on exports and investment towards a more balanced model. That prioritizes domestic consumption and innovation. He talks about rebalancing the economy, focusing on high-quality development, rather than just chasing GDP numbers.
Okay, so that's a pretty big challenge, considering the scale of China's economy.
Yeah.
And its dependence on exports.
Yeah, it definitely is. But Xi Jinping seems determined to steer China through this transition. He argues that it's necessary for long-term stability and achieving what he calls the Chinese dream of national rejuvenation.
Right. Okay, so we have a strong centralized party driving this complex economic transition. Where does technology fit into all of this?
That's a crucial piece. He sees technological advancement as absolutely vital for China's future success. He stresses the need for innovation and self-reliance, particularly in key fields like artificial intelligence, quantum computing, semiconductors.
Right, and it seems like he's particularly concerned about reducing China's dependence on foreign technology.
Yeah, particularly in light of, these recent trade tensions and restrictions. So he sees it as a matter of national security and a key element of China's ability to compete on the global stage.
Okay, so it's almost like a technological arms race,
Yeah.
with China needing to be at the forefront to protect its interests.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. He sees technological dominance as essential for economic competitiveness, military strength, and ultimately for achieving China's geopolitical ambitions.
Now, before we move on to Volume 2, I want to touch on something you mentioned earlier, which is China's role on the world stage. How does Xi Jinping envision China's place in the world?
Well, this is where this idea of a community of shared future for mankind comes in. He's advocating for a more multipolar world order, one where China plays a leading role in global governance and cooperation. He emphasizes win-win solutions, shared prosperity, particularly through things like the Belt and Road Initiative.
But there's a lot of skepticism about China's intentions, right? Some people see this community of shared future as maybe a way to mask China's ambitions for dominance.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of debate about that. Some see it as genuine cooperation. Others view it as a more strategic move to advance China's interests and reshape the global order in its favor.
It's a complex picture,
Yeah.
and one that I think is going to become even more important as we delve into the later volume.
Absolutely, because Xi Jinping's vision for China's future is ambitious, multifaceted, and it's already having a profound impact on the world.
Okay, so let's move on to Volume 2. This one was published in 2017. So building on the foundation laid in Volume 1, how does this second volume develop Xi Jinping's thinking further?
Well, Volume 2, it really gets into the specifics. It delves deeper into some of the policy frameworks that underpin Xi Jinping's vision.
Okay, so we're moving from the broad strokes to the finer details of how he plans to achieve this national rejuvenation.
Exactly. And two prominent frameworks that he lays out are the four-pronged comprehensive strategy and the five-sphere integrated plan.
Okay, let's break this down a bit. What does the four-pronged comprehensive strategy actually entail?
So it outlines four key areas of focus for the country. Completing the building of a moderately prosperous society, deepening reform, advancing the rule of law, and strengthening party discipline.
Okay, so it's a pretty holistic approach, addressing economic development, political reform, legal frameworks, and party discipline all at once.
Exactly. It's about a coordinated and balanced approach to achieving national rejuvenation.
And how does the five-sphere integrated plan fit into this?
So the five-sphere integrated plan focuses on achieving coordinated progress in five key spheres: economic, political, cultural, social, and ecological.
Okay, that's interesting. The inclusion of ecological progress stands out to me. It seems to echo Xi Jinping's earlier statements about the importance of environmental protection.
Yeah, you're right. Volume 2 definitely develops this theme further.
Yeah.
Xi Jinping really emphasizes the need for sustainable development. He recognizes that environmental degradation poses a threat to China's long-term prosperity. He has this famous quote, "Lucid waters and lush mountains are invaluable assets."
Yeah, I've heard that one. It's a pretty powerful statement, especially coming from the leader of a country that has historically prioritized rapid industrialization, sometimes at the expense of the environment.
Right. It signifies a shift in thinking, this recognition that economic growth at all costs is no longer sustainable.
So there's this connection now between environmental well-being and the Chinese dream of national rejuvenation.
Absolutely. A healthy environment is seen as essential for a thriving and prosperous China.
Beyond these domestic policy frameworks, Volume 2 also goes into Xi Jinping's views on foreign policy and global engagement.
Yeah, it elaborates on China's role in global affairs. And it expands on this concept of a community of shared future for mankind.
Right. Now, we touched on that phrase earlier, but it's a bit ambiguous. What exactly does Xi Jinping mean by a community of shared future for mankind?
Yeah, it's a complex idea, and its interpretation is definitely subject to debate. On the one hand, it seems to be advocating for greater multilateralism, win-win cooperation, shared responsibility in addressing global challenges, like climate change and poverty.
So a move away from a zero-sum mentality towards a more collaborative approach.
Exactly. But then on the other hand, there are concerns that this concept might also be a way for China to promote its own model of governance and try to reshape the global order to better suit its interests.
Right, so it's this delicate balancing act between promoting cooperation and simultaneously pursuing national interests.
Exactly. And you see that tension throughout the book.
Yeah.
The Belt and Road Initiative, for instance, is presented as a prime example of this community of shared future in action.
Right, it's a massive infrastructure project spanning continents, aiming to boost trade and connectivity. But it's also been seen by some as a way for China to exert its influence globally.
Yeah, there's no doubt that it serves both economic and geopolitical purposes.
So Volume 2 reveals a more assertive China, stepping onto the world stage, advocating for its vision of global cooperation, but also simultaneously pursuing its own strategic goals.
Exactly. And this assertive stance becomes even more pronounced in Volume 3, which was published in 2019.
Okay, so how does Volume 3 differ from the previous two?
Volume 3, it reflects a bit of a shift, a noticeable shift, I think, towards tighter control and a more nationalistic tone.
Okay, so a hardening of stance maybe?
Yeah.
In response to the growing complexities on the global stage.
Possibly. There's definitely a greater emphasis on things like ideological control, national security. The speeches and writings in this volume, they really reinforce the party's authority in areas like education, culture, religion, cyberspace.
Okay, so it's a concerted effort to consolidate power and ensure ideological conformity across all aspects of society.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. And this also includes, a firmer stance on issues related to Hong Kong and Taiwan.
Okay, let's talk about those. How does Xi Jinping address this one country, two systems principle governing Hong Kong and Macau?
Well, he reaffirms the principle, but he also emphasizes the importance of national unity in security, which signals, I think, a less tolerant approach to dissent or calls for independence.
So there's potential for tension there, especially given the pro-democracy movements in Hong Kong.
Right. It definitely raises concerns about the future of Hong Kong's autonomy.
And what about the Taiwan question? How does that get addressed in this volume?
Well, he continues to advocate for peaceful reunification, but he also warns against any move towards Taiwan independence. He states very clearly that secessionism is a red line that cannot be crossed.
So the message is clear: Taiwan is part of China, and any attempt at separation will be met with strong opposition.
Exactly. And there's this sense in this volume of growing impatience with the status quo and a stronger determination to achieve reunification, even if it means resorting to military force.
Okay, so the stakes are very high. And this brings us to the fourth volume, the most recent one, published in 2022. Now, this volume offers insights into Xi Jinping's thinking amidst a rapidly changing global landscape.
Right. We've had this COVID-19 pandemic, geopolitical tensions, economic uncertainties.
Right, a lot of upheaval. So how does Volume 4 reflect these challenges?
Well, it's a volume marked by, I'd say, a sense of resilience, determination. In the face of adversity, Xi Jinping really doubles down on the need for self-reliance, on the party's control, to navigate these turbulent times.
It's like he's battening down the hatches, preparing for a protracted struggle.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. He recognizes that the path ahead is going to be challenging and that China needs to be prepared.
And this volume draws heavily on the lessons learned from the COVID-19 pandemic.
Absolutely. He highlights what he sees as the successes of China's response to the pandemic, and he attributes those successes to the strength of the party's leadership and the effectiveness of its centralized system.
Right. So it's a narrative of strength and resilience.
It is.
And he contrasts it with what he sees as the failings of other countries, particularly Western democracies.
Exactly.
And he uses this narrative to justify tightening control even further, reinforcing the party's dominance.
Right. He argues that this is the only way to ensure stability and security in an increasingly uncertain world.
Okay, so how does he address the economic challenges? China is facing a slowdown in growth, ongoing trade tensions with the West.
Well, he acknowledges the need to adapt to this new normal of slower growth, and he puts a really strong emphasis on domestic consumption and technological innovation as drivers for future development.
Right, so a shift away from an export-driven model toward a more self-reliant and domestically driven economy.
Precisely. And this ties back to his emphasis on technological self-reliance, especially in those key areas we talked about: semiconductors, artificial intelligence. He sees these as crucial for achieving economic security and reducing China's vulnerability to external pressures.
Okay, so it's a comprehensive vision, ambitious, but it faces significant challenges, both domestically and internationally.
Absolutely.
Well, it's been a fascinating journey through these 4 volumes of Xi Jinping, The Governance of China. As we wrap up, what are some of the key takeaways that stand out to you?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that Xi Jinping is a leader with a grand vision for China. And he's absolutely determined to make that vision a reality. And he's willing to use all the tools at his disposal, economic, political, military, cultural, to achieve his goals.
And that vision has the potential to really reshape the world.
It does.
So the question is, does this reshaping lead to greater cooperation or increased conflict?
That's the big question. I think the answer is probably somewhere in between. China clearly wants to reshape the global order to better reflect its interests, but it also recognizes that it needs to cooperate on issues like climate change, pandemics, global economic stability.
Right, it's a complex picture. We see this tension between cooperation and competition, playing out in initiatives like the Belt and Road, but then also this increasing assertiveness on issues like Taiwan and the South China Sea.
Right, and domestically we see this tightening of control. It's across all aspects of society.
Right. Xi Jinping seems determined to mold China in his image.
Yes.
And to ensure that the Communist Party remains the dominant force in Chinese life.
I think that's a fair assessment.
Well, it's been fascinating, unsettling at times, but definitely a deep dive into the mind of a leader who is shaping the 21st century.
It has.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. And until next time, keep those minds sharp and stay curious.